Sure. So according to our tracking, we've been doing a lot of tracking on child labor legislation over the past 3 years. And just in the past 3 years, at least 29 states have introduced bills to roll back state child labor protections, and 10 have enacted those bills. And, many of them are Republican controlled states, but some are not. And so I think it's important to recognize that this is an issue that really cuts across politics too. And that's something we continue to be concerned about. But in terms of the changes that the bills make, it's kind of there's a big menu, but they often deal with expanding the number of hours that youth can work, per day or per week, often in or sometimes in violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act, like was the case in Iowa and is now the case in Ohio, with a bill that's currently on Governor DeWine's desk. So if you have a direct line to the governor, send me an email. But then we also see bills to create new exemptions from state child labor standards, often under the guise of work-based learning or career and technical education. So, we have these bona fide programs through which young teenagers can have work-based learning experiences, but there's this effort afoot to weaken the regulations around those programs, and introduce new sort of unregulated ways to exempt minors from hazardous work protections under state law. And then we're also seeing efforts to lower the alcohol service age, allowing minors to work in the presence of alcohol, allowing minors to drive vehicles on farms or drive to and from work, as was recently passed again in Iowa. And then I think that mostly covers the bevy of changes. Oh, the other one I wanted to mention was youth subminimum wage. So, under state and federal law, minors can often be paid less than the state or federal subminimum wage based on their occupation or their student status. And we've seen efforts in many states to expand those youth subminimum wages or implement youth subminimum wages in states that don't currently have them. And so these are all efforts that we're working with our partners in many states to combat, to oppose, and we've had a lot of success in at least watering down bills where we can't necessarily block them. And I think to Charlie's point, like there are these pervasive economic messages that have been really powerful in some of these states, and it's been a challenge, but I think to combat those, but I think where we've been able to work with community and be able to be out in front of these bills, we have seen some success in opposing them. Yeah, and this has actually been really an encouraging sign. I think in the past year, I actually was tracking more bills to strengthen child labor standards at the state level than I was seeing efforts to roll them back. And that is kind of a new trend we're starting to see. And so that has been really exciting. There are so many things that states can do to strengthen their standards. Many states have child labor standards on the books that haven't been touched in 60, 70 years or more. But there's a lot of opportunity there. So, anything. So I'll just give an example of Colorado which has really taken several steps in the past few years to strengthen their standards. So first, in 2023, they passed a bill to allow victims of illegal child labor to sue their employer. And then in 2024, they followed that up with a bill to make child labor victims eligible for damages paid by the employer, as well as increased penalties to use them for wage theft enforcement and other types of labor standards enforcement. And they also removed parental criminal liability from state code. And these changes are really important because we know that children and their families are often scared to come forward to report child labor violations. And under many state laws, they really have nothing to gain. They only have something to lose, which is losing their job. And so these types of changes take a really important step forward to actually compensating victims for child labor violations and increasing penalties to levels that actually will deter violations. There's a range of other policy solutions that we're seeing in many other states, and you can view them all on our Holding the Line series, brief on child labor, where we provide a pretty comprehensive menu of all the different legislative options available to states. And some states are also doing this through the rulemaking process.